is being recorded right now. And if you do need to communicate, if you want to communicate with each other, I highly encourage you to do that. I'm going to ask you to do that in the chat. If you're not sure how to get to it, it's at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You can kind of just click there, and there's usually a little icon that says chat. If not, there might be 3 little buttons. You click on that, and I want to encourage you guys to communicate to each other in chat. And best of all, if you could at least type here so that I could get record that you are in attendance today and a part of this. And then also any questions that you have, please include them in the chat. And what's going to happen is Kathy Quiggle is here with us, and she's going to take all those questions and compile them. And then at the end of the session, she will ask whatever questions we did not cover. So this is going to be just a really cool session for you guys to be a part of. And then the last norm you want to be mindful of is your environment. Again, just kind of be conscious of what people can see around you, what people can hear. If your mic accidentally isn't muted, just again, mindful of what people can hear. And I see you guys all in chat, so it's awesome. I miss every single one of you, and we will continue. So our agenda for today, we're going to do a quick icebreaker question. Then we're going to do a parking lot question. And then Wendy McClung is here, and she's going to get into social emotional learning online and another tech tool that you guys can use to try to engage your students with social emotional learning. So with that being said, our icebreaker is this question. You are the 8th passenger deserted on Gilligan's Island. What 3 items are a must for you to have? And making sure you guys still see my screen. And the way you can get to that is go ahead and go to menti.com, use the code 99251, and I will do the same on my end. You're trapped with Gilligan, the professor. What 3 items are a must for you to have? No, still omitting people. So again, you're going to go to menti.com. Use the 3-digit code that's up there, 99251, and type in your answers. There we go. Flint. Nice. Pocket knife, that's a good one. Fishing pole. Water, another good one. Sunscreen. Yeah, these are all good ones. And these are all based on the assumption that you know you're going to be deserted on the island before you went on that 3-hour tour. I never understood how they only went on the 3-hour trip, but yet they packed as if they were going to be away for 6 months with everything that they have with them, everything that they can make out of coconuts. So while I'm mentioning this, Wendy, just like we use the Menti here, and I had you guys go to Menti, sign in with a code, Wendy is going to have you do the same thing for the remainder of our session. So if you want to follow along with her on your phone or an iPad or a laptop, you can certainly do that. And it's just, it will be good to have both those devices. And I know when I sent this out, I asked if you guys could be logged into your school Google account. We kind of modified the session a little bit. She was going to have you work in the technology tool that we were going to show you today, but we decided it would be easier for you guys if we presented it, and then you guys can take the information and start developing your own. We were going to try to do both of them simultaneously, and we thought it might be a little bit much to try to cover, because I didn't want this to be a 3-hour long tip session for you guys. I tried to keep it to a good hour and a half. So awesome. So good job. And then let's move to our parking lot question. And let's see, we have a few good ones. And Wendy, I know you're muted. I'm gonna unmute you right now. And I know that you've been doing this off and on. Do you have any tips on how to contact students that have not participated in online learning?
So I've been reaching out through Google Classroom. That's the first way I reach out to my students, because they usually have that on their phones. A lot of them do. But if that doesn't work, then you would want to go into either Zangle or Aries and get contact information there, and then take the step to contact parents, or contact, if the student has information there, contact the student. I've been emailing parents as well. If their student doesn't, or their child doesn't show up, I just want to make sure they're okay. And I always phrase it like, are you okay? Can you have them check in with me? Rather than they're not doing their work, because right now we don't know what families are going through. So.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. And if you still have a question you wanted to answer, again, you can just go to the bit.ly. It's bit.ly/tip parking, and tip is in all caps. The link is in the chat, and I can put it in there again. And I say all that to say that we won't have time to get through all the questions today, but we are going to record a long-term parking podcast answering all these questions, especially the one that is of David that says, is this going to last forever? We hope not, but we definitely are going to cover it. So with all that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Wendy McClung. You may have heard of her. I've heard of her myself. I think I've met her once or twice. And so she's going to teach you guys about doing, about social emotional learning online using Pear Deck. She is one of our mental health instructors. She's also she's certified through as a Google Educator levels 1 and 2. She has a BS in psychology. And then and the reason why she's presenting this is she is also an inspirational educator. So I'm going to turn it over to her. Again, if you have any questions while she's going through this, please feel free to type them out in the chat, and Kathy will grab them. We'll answer them at the end. And again, I want to encourage you to have a device, whether it be your phone or an iPad or something, because she's going to have you follow along with her. She's going to show you on her screen the teacher view of what she's doing, but you can follow along with her as a student on a second device, or if you want to flip back and forth on your laptop, you can do that as well. Just open another window. So, and I will be in chat. I can see chat as well. So if there's something like urgent, I will also be available to answer those. So with that being said, Wendy McClung, the floor is yours.
All right, well, thank you so much. I am, Chris, I'm gonna have you disable the screen sharing for participants, but while he's doing that, if you could do me a little favor, open up a tab or a browser and type the words join, JOIN, and then PD, just the letter P, letter D.com. You should see, it looks like a blackboard. Do you guys see that? joinpd.com. Yes? Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
Oh, I'm good. Okay. This makes it easier when you can see what I'm talking about. So let me really quick scoot some stuff on my screen here. And, oh, there we go. Okay. Apologize for the little delay here. Let's see if this works. How does it look now? Can you see this? Is everybody seeing the screen, the join screen? Looks like people are connecting, so that must be a yes. Awesome. All right, so go ahead and go on to joinpd.com and type in SYTDL. That's not an I, that's a lowercase l. And if you can't figure that out, Pear Deck does this really cool thing where it gives you the words, kind of like Morse code, so that students can more easily figure out what it is that the letters are. So once we get everybody in, it looks like we have 11 people connected. Give you guys another minute. So before we get started, giving everybody a few minutes to get into this session, just so you know, I'm going to be showing you on my end of things what this looks like from a teacher's view. So my screen that I'm sharing is going to be something that you guys are going to see as a teacher view, but your screen that you're logged in on with the Join PD link is going to be a student view. And so you're going to get both perspectives. So you're going to participate as a student while watching my screen and seeing what a teacher would see. So is there anybody else who needs to join still? Looks like we're good. I'm going to go ahead and get started. And the nice thing is if you get started, you get a chance to see the code in the corner. So students can continue to join. They can join in with the code that's in the corner. So as Chris said, I am a mental health instructor at Redlands East Valley High School. I have a degree in psychology from Grand Canyon University. I became a level 1 and 2 Google certified educator, and I am also an inspirational educator, which is a certification that Pear Deck gives educators who go through like their little certification programs. So you guys should see on your screen that you have the screen that I have in front of me. Now, the cool thing about Pear Deck is you can actually pace your students. So you guys are going to be paced with me. You don't have to change your screen. You don't get a chance to jump ahead or go behind. You stay along with me. And this helps with student engagement. So the next thing you're going to see in front of you is you should see a screen that says temperature check. So what I would like you guys to do, there's a purple bar that you can drag back and forth, and I'm going to take the quote-unquote temperature of this room. Now, how I do that is I ask all of my students to go ahead and drag that bar to about how you're feeling at this time. And if it's a 0, that means you're in a great space right now, you're thriving, and that you can focus on what's going on. In the middle, somewhere around 5 is something is bothering me, but I can still focus. And a 10 is I'm just not feeling in control of my behavior or my emotions right now. So once everybody does that, I'm going to share the responses. So everybody can see what the teacher sees here, and you can see people can still drag around their gauge here. But what I'm doing is I'm taking a temperature of the room. I want to know where my students are at. I want to know how they're feeling. I want to know the ways in which I can help them. So if I have a lot of students who are from like the 1 to 2 range, I know that we're doing pretty good. And if you get down to the range of about 10 or 7 or lower, I'm a little more concerned about my students. So this is a great way to do an assessment on the emotions of your students. And you can use this, again, distance learning, you can use this tool. It's really a nice tool. So this is what it looks like, but this is also what it looks like in different views. So right now what you're seeing is that you're seeing it overlaid on your screen. You're seeing everybody's options, but if you look here, you can see a grid layout. So you can see which students said what, how they each responded. So you get to see that, or you can see it and you're in a list layout. So you can see it just like this. So what you're, let's see here. Sorry, my computer's running a teeny bit slow. Bear with me here for just a moment. All right. So now you guys see how it looks. I'm going to go back to the layered response. Let me see. And I'm going to go back. So if you came in a little later, had a little trouble getting in, the code is in the corner. It's SYTDL on joinpd.com. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about social emotional learning. What is it? Have you guys heard of this term before? You may have seen it, maybe not, but I'm going to talk about what it is and what it means and how we look at student social emotional learning. So the first thing we look at is self-awareness. So students are going to be able to identify their emotions. As adults, we sometimes have a hard time with this too, but as teens and as young people, they start to struggle with this. They need to recognize their strengths and their weaknesses, their needs, and they develop this growth mindset. So how am I going to improve myself? What are the steps I'm going to take to solve some of these maybe weaknesses or areas of need that I have? So that's self-awareness. Another area that we look at is self-management. Now, that is managing emotions, managing your impulses, and managing like your behaviors. So essentially at this age group, when we're working with students who are probably about 14 years old up to 18 years old or so, unless you're working in an adult program. But this age group of teens, their frontal lobe of their brain is not yet developed. That won't fully develop until they're about 24 years old, 25, right in there. So we tend to see a lot more impulsive behavior with teens, which is normal for their age group. But during this, when we're teaching social emotional skills, we want to make sure that we're showing them ways to manage their emotions, helping them with that, because it really is a learned skill. And as we're teaching them, we're demonstrating the skill by managing our own emotions and showing them how that looks. Another area that we are looking at is social awareness. And that means that they're able to have empathy for others. They can see things through a different lens than the lens that they were essentially born with. So when we go through our classes, and if you start to ask questions of students, you're going to see different perspectives. I teach ethics. I see this all the time. People believe very differently. And so it teaches students to really put themselves in the shoes of others and understand where somebody else is coming from, and knowing it might not be their experience, but that doesn't mean it's not a valid experience. The next area is relationship skills. So we're looking at communication, cooperation, and especially conflict resolution. You guys know that teens sometimes don't have the best conflict resolution skills. And even some adults don't have good conflict resolution skills. These are areas where we need to work with students and strengthen these things and ensure that they know how to form relationships that are going to be foundational for the rest of their lives. We know that relationship building is important not only in our personal relationships like our family and our friends, but also in our professional relationships. So I really want to develop those with my students. And finally, responsible decision making. So that means that they can think ahead, and when they're able to think, I probably shouldn't make this decision because I'm going to get in trouble, it could lead to more consequences. That's a sign of maturity, but it's something that they have to grow in. So even when I have to stop my 6-year-old and say, hey, stop what you're doing, think about how this is going to affect somebody else. That's still teaching that skill is, do I want to be loud at 6 o'clock in the morning and wake the whole house up? Or should I, reel in my decision making and sit quietly and read a book or do a puzzle or something? And so we're teaching all of these things. One thing I've noticed in every advisory I've been to is that these skills are ones that our advisory panels often mention. So when we go through our advisories, that we say, what are the top skills that you're looking for? And they're looking for students, or actually they're looking for employees who are able to manage themselves, who are resilient, who do have the ability to be self-aware, that have the control over their own impulses. So these are skills that are not only going to help them in the long term with their own lives, but they're skills that employers are looking for. So I believe that when you're talking about CTE, that social emotional learning is very, very important. So right now, in the time that we're in, we're facing a lot of challenges. So in a normal setting, we can teach social emotional learning the way we've always taught it. But now we're looking at some new challenges facing these students. For example, some students, their parents are income compromised, or on the flip side of that, their parents might be working, 12-hour shifts 5-6 days a week because they are in demand, because they are an essential worker. So that is something that a lot of students are dealing with and having to maybe compensate for their family, either having no income or having very more hours that they have to work. So they're taking on more responsibility. Their stress levels are elevated due to the uncertainty surrounding the virus. When are things going to get back to normal? Will I be affected? How am I going to compensate for my family being affected? Because let's face it, our kids and our students, they want to be part of the solution. They might even feel obligated to be part of the solution in their own homes. So we have to be aware that they might be facing elevated stress levels. Multiple people using the same computer. Not every household has the ability to get more than one laptop or more than one computer. There might be students who are working from their phone with limited service. They might not have access to good Wi-Fi or reliable Wi-Fi. So some students might not be jumping into these Zoom meetings, not because they don't want to be, but because they just can't get there because somebody else, like their parent, is using the computer to work, or they're sharing with siblings who are also in school. They may be feeling overwhelmed by change, and some people, when they get overwhelmed, they shut down. They might, instead of dealing with, facing like logging into Google Classroom and making their schedule, some of these students are just going to shut down and they're going to avoid it because it's easier and it's a coping mechanism. If I avoid it, I don't have to deal with it. And if I don't have to deal with it, I don't have to feel those stressors that come with trying to adapt to this new change. The support systems might be diminished. So we know that not every student has an amazing support system at home. Some students may even be in foster care or living with guardians instead of their parents. So they're disconnected currently with those support systems like teachers and counselors and our SROs and our administrative staff who see them regularly and check on them regularly. So that's a really big deal. That's like being cut off from your oxygen in some ways. So some students are facing this right now and they're not in an ideal situation at home. And finally, we want to look at food instability. A lot of districts are doing their part in providing meals for students. However, it might not be that they can't afford the meals. It could just be that the grocery stores are depleted sometimes and they're having a hard time getting to those items that they need. It could be as much as feeling like, well, I'm worried my family doesn't even have toilet paper. And that can be something that really bothers them. So I'm going to bring up this amazing theory of psychology. You might recognize it if you've seen it before. It's called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And the way that this works is the bottom tiers have to be met before you can progress into the higher tiers. So as you see, there's 5 tiers here. And the bottom one is physiological needs. So that is food, water, and sleep. There's more to it probably than is here, but and assuming that some students are really struggling with the feeling that they can't get enough food, that they're worried about, being able to sleep at night, where they're going to sleep, that affects their physiological needs. They're not going to progress to the next stage and be able to meet those safety needs until they can take care of their very basic needs. So safety needs would be stability in your home, the ability to know you're safe. And it might not be that they don't have a home, it just might be they don't feel safe around the people that they're with. So if you look at those bottom 2 tiers, some of our students aren't going to get past those bottom 2 tiers, right? So we are looking at students who might be not able to go into love and belonging or having self-esteem. And so we want to keep this in mind and keep it in the back of our minds that some students are just in survival mode right now. And that's a challenge when we're trying to teach the same curriculum. We're trying to do everything we can the same way. These students can't thrive in that with that expectation on them. So how do we bridge this gap? You see over here on the side of your screen, there's a student, and there's a bridge between the student and the teacher. So how do we work towards bridging that gap and meeting the needs of the student? So the first thing I really want to stress is just to change what learning looks like. It's okay to shift away. If you had this beautiful laid out plan and it was a perfect curriculum and you were ready to go, it's okay to get away from how you view the importance of that, the curriculum that you're currently teaching. So you have to look at it in the current situation. What does it look like right now? What fundamental truths surrounding education can we change to adapt to the needs of our students? So for example, having a worksheet is really good, and there's a lot of great ways to turn a worksheet, a paper worksheet, into this amazing digital worksheet. But the student might not be able to complete it because they don't have the self-management tools to stay on task, especially students who are maybe have IEPs, who need to be redirected quite a bit. So we have to shift out to, are their emotional needs being met first? So we want to help them develop positive habits. I've sent my students all a calendar that they can fill out and try to manage themselves a little bit. The next step is refocusing our priorities. So, oops, I'm sorry, that got a little too far ahead of myself. What are the most important things we can teach right now? What are the things that we need to focus on? Because we're teaching them skills that are lifelong. They're not short term. They really, really need to be taught how to just function in this new situation, as we do too, because I think there's a lot of teachers who are also feeling that. Let me go up. Normalizing the abnormal. So this is something that a therapist friend told me, and it was really good, and I thought I would share it. This is not normal. And this whole situation, as you all know very well, is just so abnormal for everybody, our students, us, everybody around us. So we need to acknowledge that that is the truth. We can't expect normal behavior in this abnormal situation. So normalizing stress, saying, yeah, I feel it too. And anxiety, those are all going to come out, the frustrations that your students might feel. So I'm a little bit transparent with my students. I say, I had a kind of difficult week, but here's what I'm doing to help manage that stress I was feeling. I started, writing things down. I started delegating what I couldn't do. I started prioritizing. So I'm able to share with them the things that I'm struggling with, not in great detail, but I'm showing them how I'm coping. And that's really normalizing that, this is abnormal and we're all adjusting, and that's okay. So just really being supportive of the fact that this isn't normal and we know it's not normal. Another wonderful tool I learned from the same dear friend of mine is holding your student with something called unconditional positive regard. So we all have those students who maybe have pushed our buttons many, many, many times, many days in a row. And it's really hard sometimes to make yourself be positive with them because you feel frustrated. However, if you hold them in an unconditional positive regard, you are basically saying all your mistakes are wiped clean. You have a clean slate, and I'm not going to judge you for anything you're going to tell me. I will always think you're better than you think you are. And so what that does is it really builds that relationship with them. And you can still correct negative behaviors, but you just word it in a way that's like, I know you're better than that, and I really believe you can do it. And you made a mistake, but I really think you're a good person inside. And so that to me was a very strong tool I've been using for the last year or so. And I've had students really come to me and feel safe, even when other teachers maybe don't feel quite as warm towards them. And finally, I just want to address validation of emotions. So let's just imagine that you tell your best friend something or your spouse something, and they just go, well, I don't know why you feel that way. It makes you feel so demeaned and so devalued. So saying things like, thank you for sharing your emotion or how you're feeling with me, and I hear what you're saying, it makes a big deal. It's a big deal to some students who don't get validation. So if a student emails you and says, I'm feeling very overwhelmed, I would always come back with, thank you so much for feeling like you can share that with me, because it gives them a safe place to be able to express how they're feeling and not get defensive with me. So I really want to make sure students know, no matter what their emotions are, even if I don't feel those emotions, that they are valuable and that they're valid. And so doing that really makes a big difference. All right, we're going to make a little transition now. So I explained social emotional learning. I went through a little bit of what it looks like, especially on a psychological end of things. But I want to explain what Pear Deck is and how you can use it. So we're shifting gears. If you have not heard of Pear Deck yet, it's an add-on for Google or Microsoft. You can use it with either. And it's designed to increase engagement. So in our parking lot, I saw a lot of questions about engagement. So hopefully this helps address some of that. And it really invites students to be active participants in their learning. And it gives you a way to assess them as you're teaching, and they can be engaged in the learning, but you're also being able to see if they understand things or if you need to go back and review. Okay, why do I love Pear Deck? As you can see, Chris and I had the opportunity to go to ISTE last year, and we got to meet Perry, the Pear Deck mascot. We were very excited. As you can see, I was just thrilled out of my mind. But I really love it. I started using it more this year than ever, and it's really easy to use. It can be accessed from any web browser, so students don't have to have a download or an add-on or an app. They can just go straight to that Join PD, and they can get to it. So all they need is a web browser, and they can use their phone, their iPad, whatever they have. The templates that they give you these custom templates, and you can modify them and you can customize them. It's really, really easy to do. I was able to figure it out pretty quickly and adapt those templates to my own lessons to meet my goals. And it also allows students to not only assess the learning, but social emotional state of their students. Just like when I did the temperature check, you guys saw, that was one way I was able to say, hey, how are you feeling, instead of what do you understand? So it does both. It really works very well on both levels. And finally, the one thing I love about this, I don't know if you guys have been to a lot of PD where they talk about synchronous and asynchronous learning. So synchronous learning is what we're doing right now. You guys are present. I'm walking you through a presentation that's live, but because we have students who can't make it to every meeting, Pear Deck allows them to do a student-paced session where they still get the same slides and they still can respond the same way you guys will be able to respond, but they do it at their own pace in their own time. So it's really a nice tool. You could do it live, or you can do it at the student's convenience. They can work on Pear Deck. So, all right, so here's your chance to jump in as students. You're gonna get a lot of this really cool engagement right now. You will see on your screen, it asks you a question and you get a multiple choice response. So which one of the following best describes your experience with Pear Deck before today's meeting? So it's either A, you have never heard of it. You've never heard of Pear Deck, this is new. B, I have heard of Pear Deck, but I haven't used it. So you might have heard of it, you've seen Perry the Pear, and you're familiar with the little mascot, but you haven't used it. Or you've heard of Pear Deck and you've tried it. Maybe you tried it once and you just weren't really sure about how to use it, or you tried it and you liked it, but you just, you didn't have time, or you felt like you weren't wanting to do more with it. Or you're a regular user of Pear Deck. You use it every day or every week in your class. So I'm giving you guys just a minute to respond. Now I want to show you that I can see your responses here. And it looks like everybody has responded, which is great. So most of you have heard of it, but you haven't used it. And some have tried it before. So that's really good. We at least there's nobody who hasn't heard of it, but it looks like maybe nobody uses it regularly. So hopefully when I show you what you can do with it, maybe it'll kind of help spur your imagination and inspire you to maybe use it a little bit more. Okay, so I'm going to move forward. Student engagement is a big issue online. You guys agree? It is huge. And so I want to show you some ways you can engage your students and different ways you can assess their learning and their emotional status. So I'm going to ask you to think right now and to do some work. So how do you personally assess student engagement? So you're going to see on your screen that you have the option to either draw or add a text box. And if you see that it's the capital letter T, if you click it and you go ahead and go in and underneath either of these, either column, you can add your text in. And if you don't want to do that, you can draw a picture. But in a classroom, how do you assess that students are engaged? I think all of us can speak to that, because we're going, okay, well, if Johnny's asleep in the back row, we know he's not engaged, right? But what if it's while distance learning? How can you really tell that a student is engaged? And it is a little more tricky. So I wanted us to compare and contrast the two worlds. So I'm going to give you guys just a minute to fill that out. And I'm going to be sharing your answers, and just kind of, this is a great way for us to actually teach each other. So let me go ahead and show your responses. So somebody says you ask questions and you visually check work. Because you're in person, you can do that. Okay, walking around the classroom and assessing, great for the classroom. And while distance learning, I like this, that you can ask questions regularly with a poll or a Mentimeter. So you're asking them for engagement. And I think teenagers personally, I think most people like that quick engagement, not something that's going to be a huge, like, long paragraph, but just, how are you doing today? What do you think? How do you feel? So I like that. Okay, so eye contact with students in the classroom. Somebody has not done distance learning yet, so hopefully this will help a whole lot. Asking questions while going through the lesson. And then this person uses Google Forms and assigns points. So that's good that you use a form to grab things, to grab information. Okay, so I like thank you for being artistic. I love it. I don't know who this is, but thank you you actually have better art skills than me. In a classroom, you see smiling, their hands, are they on the phone? I know every kid wants to have their hands on their phone. So in Zoom meetings, I see that you have smiles, raising hands. So when we're not right in a Zoom meeting, it gets a little more tricky maybe. So that's a good point to make, but I do like that you mentioned, like, the students will show their faces. I don't know how many of you guys are having difficulty getting students to show their faces, but my students are like, no, I'm too ugly, and I keep telling them that is so not true. Don't speak that evil, but they do. If they're awake or not, that's an excellent way to tell. So online forms, emailing questions, online games, ask and answer. So a lot of people are using questioning, either like the asynchronous with forms or just using it in Zoom. So good, I like these answers. So I'm just sharing them so you guys can see some of these. Oh, an online exit ticket, that's excellent. I love that. In fact, I'm going to show you how to do that with Pear Deck. Participation in a weekly discussion. I've been doing weekly discussions as well, and that's another way I can see their engagement. Log in daily. Okay, so log in daily is attendance, Zoom meetings, completing assignments, Google Forms. A lot of Google users here. Awesome. So I'm going to move on to the next slide. Thank you guys so much for your input and your feedback. I'm always open to new feedback too. You're going to see something a little different here. This is a way that students can drag icons. So you guys are going to see numbers 1 through 5. And they can drag these icons over and show you how they understand or what they believe. So in this case, I'm asking you to use the numbers to rank your top priorities for distance learning. And so 1 is the highest and 5 is the lowest. So you see different ones here. So if you have those numbers, just go ahead and start dragging them into the row. The first one is making sure that the students are doing their work. The second one is to support social and emotional needs of your students. The third one is the flexible classroom for students who can't log in during office hours. The fourth one is to find new ways to engage them and keep their interest. And the fifth one is to assess their understanding of a new topic. And everybody's is going to look different because right now, people are shifting their paradigms, they're changing their viewpoints, and we also deal with different populations of students. So right now, you might have students who are really engaged and you're getting a lot of kids logging in. So maybe you're not so focused on supporting their needs as much as you are making sure that they're able to access what they need. So it might be different. Again, we're all different teachers. We're all going through different things. But I'm going to show you what I'm seeing. I'm seeing it like this. So you might want to sort this out. You might want to do it in a different view like this. That might be a little more helpful to sort out your information and to see where everybody's priorities lie. Okay, so how can you use this in a classroom? So one way you can do that is you're asking students to demonstrate sequences. For example, if I want to know the steps to changing the oil in a car, you know, what steps do you need to go through? And they need to be able to identify what comes first, what's next, especially when it comes to safety. You guys know that safety has a protocol. Usually there's a best practice for everything we do. So identifying the order in which things go, you know, being able to show that they need to do one thing first so that the rest of their steps are safe. So I like this tool. You can probably use it in a million ways, but those are just some examples. I would love to see what you guys come up with. So you can see that. Another way you can use this is for labeling and identifying locations. Now, some of you guys probably have no idea what the answers are here, but for me, I teach anatomy, and one of the parts of anatomy is labeling taking the term and knowing where it goes in the appropriate area of the organ. So what you'll do is there's a little line feature. You draw a line from the term to the appropriate area. This is great for labeling, like I said, body parts, engine parts, when you talk about geographical locations, things like that, structures of an organ, or connecting an event to a location specifically. So where does this occur? Now, I picked a heart and all I did was copy and pasted it into this. It's really easy to do. So you can take any image you want and create any kind of label you want or term. I chose the heart because it was appropriate, but you can just insert a shape, type into that shape the term you want to use, and have them drag it out. So we're gonna just take a quick look. I'm gonna stack it. Wow. You might get some of this. That's why you might want to sort. I know you guys are like, I have no idea. So you might want to sort this out. And let's see here. This one right here is almost right. So it's confusing, but when you cover something, let's say you cover the anatomy of the heart, you can go back and check and see if they understand, or if you need to go back and review. So this is a great way for them to identify simple parts, and I love using it for anatomy. Now, if you're currently using a phone to view this, you'll have to turn it on its side like this. So you should have your phone like that in order to use this particular slide. What you're going to see on one side of your screen, you're going to see a website. You guys should see one that's FFA website talking about careers or career choices in agriculture and college degrees in agriculture. And so on the other side, you'll see the question. So what you can do here is you can share a website with your students and have them read it. And it's actually embedded into the slides. So they're not going off clicking away, because once they start clicking open new tabs, you get them down that rabbit hole of wanting to click more tabs. And I like the fact that Pear Deck keeps them in this particular screen. It doesn't allow them to go clicking around. And so you have them engaging. Now, that's not to say they can't. It's just to say that you can tell when students start clicking around, you can kind of like monitor them, but in the classroom. But in this one, it says, which field of study in agriculture is the most appealing to you? So they have to read the slide, or they have to read the website embedded into the slide, and then make them think about a question. Now, the next slide, if I wanted to continue with this lesson, I could ask them a multiple choice question to go with it, or an open-ended question. So I can add more Pear Deck to this. But you can embed content, and that's really what I wanted you guys to see, is that you can easily do it because you're doing it in one screen instead of multiple screens. All right, we're going to jump back over and embed a little more social emotional learning in. As you can see, we have 4 very different roller coasters here in front of you, and you see an exclamation point in front of you. Take that exclamation point and go ahead and drag it to where your emotional roller coaster is right now. You might feel like you're just the little kiddie coaster and it's a worm coming out of an apple and it's not scary, you've got it together. Or you might feel like you're on the Matterhorn. It's, you know, it's fun, but you know, you might have some, if you have back problems, it's not a really great roller coaster to ride. You can, at the bottom left corner, you see Viper at Six Flags. I used to ride that and love it. I probably would never ride it again, but that one's a little more scary. But the one on the right, again, I don't think this is a real roller coaster, but you know, when you look at it, you understand that this is madness, and if you want to get on it, you definitely want to bring your vomit bag with you. But the whole point in doing this is sometimes we ask students, how are you feeling? And we want them to say, I'm feeling good, I'm feeling stressed, I'm feeling this way or that way. But sometimes students don't know how they're feeling, but they can relate to an image in front of them. And so when words aren't enough or words aren't appropriate, you can ask them to identify their emotions, their feelings, without words, but using an image. So if I was to drag it, I could say, you know, I'm feeling a little bit more like the Matterhorn today. Tomorrow I might feel like the one on the right lower corner, but today it's more the Matterhorn. And again, we can show the responses, and it comes up as a box, and everybody can see where everybody is. Another way to take the temperature in the room, another way to assess how students are feeling, and a great way to use images rather than text to get students engaged. So one really cool thing with Pear Deck, I'm going to go back to the last one. Sorry, 1 second. See, you can go backwards. That's the nice thing about Pear Deck. I want to bring up another way you can use this. It came to my mind and I wanted to share. So if you're teaching about job skills, the 4 images you can use is what is appropriate dress for a job interview. So you might not be measuring their emotions. You might be asking them to pick a visual representation of what you were discussing. So it helps you to understand if they understand what an appropriate dress code would be for a job interview. You know, you can have a tuxedo, a prom dress, you know, slacks and a nice button up, you know, a nice business suit, jeans, whatever you want. But that is another way to use the slide that doesn't involve social emotional learning, but still is appropriate for this particular layout. Okay, let's go back to the bucket. Now, one thing that Pear Deck does really well is they have an entire template section from social emotional learning. And what you can do is you can just drag in the slide, and this is what it does. It just literally populates it. Students see it as you're seeing it. And I can do this. I can like show you what it looks like on my end. It asks the students what's filling your bucket and what's draining it. One thing I've learned is that you don't want to ask close-ended questions of students, and that's a really big deal in like the psychology field. What is it that you're feeling? Tell me more about that. It's open-ended, so it forces them to think. If you say to your child, you know, how was your day? Good. Well, you know, tell me about your day. What was good about it? You know, it opens the door. You want to open the door a little bit more. You don't want to give them yes or no or good or bad, or you want them to kind of think about it a little bit more. So this helps them to be self-aware, and it really does help them to be mindful of their own emotions and the things that are affecting them. So in this case, you're asking them, what's filling your bucket? What are the good things in your life? It can be your dog, your spouse, your music, your art, you know, your faith, whatever that might be, things that fill you up and make you feel good. But also to identify things that might be taking away from that. What are the things that are stressing you? What are the things that are giving you anxiety? And so it makes them pause and take a little snapshot of, how am I feeling now? What are the positive things and what are the negative things? And once they've identified those, they can really take it and just, you know, look for ways to get more of the things that fill you, or maybe get more skills to get more than one thing that fills your bucket, or to be able to put a cork in that hole in your bucket that's draining it. So whether it's not engaging in, you know, toxic relationships, whether it's making sure that you are getting enough sleep, because lack of sleep is causing your bucket to drain really fast. And just so you know, I'm not going to show this slide, because if people have shared some personal things, I don't, you know, I'm not going to put it up, but I could, but you have the option to also be able to lock the screens if you want to stop them from filling it in, or you can opt to save this later. So all these slides save for you later on for you to review. So if you don't capture, you know, you don't get somebody's, you know, assessment done in real time, you can go back through your slides and see what they put in. So it really does help a lot. And so I see a lot of people haven't filled this one out. Maybe it's something that takes a little more time to think about, but I'm not going to share these because I want to make sure I want to make sure I respect your privacy there. So, all right, so let's bridge this gap just a little bit. We're going to shift our paradigm of thinking about education. So that means that we're going to be looking at what's the most important, and then refocusing our priorities. So for me, I've always really put social emotional learning at the top for my students, because I really have a strong feeling that and a strong belief that it is really the top priority in everything we do, is being able to refocus on the person and not the productivity. We invest into people. We're not trying, yes, we want good outcomes for our students. We want to articulate students. We want to pass students. We want to see these amazing things come out of them. But I really feel like there is a gap if we're not feeding into our relationships with them and making sure that they are important to us, not just what they can produce, but who they are. Normalizing the abnormal is another good way to bridge that gap. Again, going over, you know, it's okay to feel the way you're feeling, and everything is abnormal right now, and you're validated in feeling anxious, and you're validated in feeling like a little more stressed than normal. And one thing I used to teach in psychology was there's normal negative feelings. So going through a time like this, stress is normal. Anxiety is normal. Those are not a mental illness, they're just normal feelings. They only become abnormal when they start to disrupt your everyday life. And so if a student does tell you that, you know, that would be something you'd want to take to their counselor or contact the parent if the parent's a safe person, but mostly just to refer to the appropriate people if a student is sharing that they're having such bad anxiety that they're not functioning. But normal anxiety, feeling anxious, feeling uncertain, that's all really normal, and everybody would normally feel that. The unconditional positive regard, making every student know that you're not judging them. Let's face it, we were all teens once. We all didn't make the best decisions, and we want people to think highly of us even when we make mistakes. So just understanding that we have to hold our students with this unconditional positive regard, because they're going to trust us, that we're not judging them, and that we are safe people to go to. And validating emotions. So saying thank you for sharing what you're feeling with me goes a long way. Even my friends who are therapists will say, you know, if I say something to them, they'll say thank you. Now, I know you guys aren't therapists, but it's a great tool to really validate them. Thank you for telling me how you're feeling. I really hear that you're feeling stressed out. That alone is very powerful. So don't underestimate the power of validating somebody's emotions. If you would like to get a little more information on Pear Deck, because all I was able to do today in our short window was to show it to you, give you some tools, give you some ideas, let you see it from a student's perspective. But if you want to play with it and explore how you could use it in different ways, the website itself is really easy to use. It's peardeck.com, and there's a link in front of you. Pear Deck has a Twitter account, and on their Twitter page, they actually will feature different ways to use Pear Deck. So it's really neat to see what other teachers are doing. They really take an approach of everybody can create something great, and if you create something great, share it with us, and we'll share it with the world. So they're a really neat company. I really like the way that they function, how they really highlight teachers. And then there's a YouTube channel. So they go through like different trainings and kind of walk you through either very easy steps, or if you're ready to step it up and do something a little more complex, then they can walk you through those more complex things as well. So there's lots of videos, lots of resources. In fact, because they are a Pear Deck, all of their templates, all of their information is actually in a web page called The Orchard. So it's kind of cute. They keep with that pear theme. So I have worked with Chris, and we have compiled all these different tips and all these different tricks to engage students. We can't go over them today. Obviously, time is short and we couldn't get through all of them, but I will point out that Pear Deck is under the interactive tools, as is Padlet, which you have used. There's also Flipgrid, which is a way that students can record themselves in a safe environment and share feelings, but they have to, it's like a presentation style. Google Drawings, Formative, Edpuzzle, Nearpod, quizzes, Epic, Educreation. So there's all kinds of things you can do. You can explore these different tools. I've used quite a few of them, so if you want a suggestion on how to do something, I might be able to point you in that direction if you want to contact me later on. There's tech experts that really go into like some really creative ways of using tech in the classroom. You see some parent engagement down below. Back up in the left upper corner, virtual field trips. I know Nepris is a really great tool, so if you're not sure how to use that, contact your CRS and they should be able to get you on the right track. Student feedback, Mentimeter is something I know Chris and Deidre were using, so you guys have experienced that. There's also one called Poll Everywhere, and it gives you that instant feedback. But at the very bottom, I want to point out at the additional tools, there's something called Institute for SEL, Social Emotional Learning. So I'm going to click on that. I have it here, and I'm sharing my screen with you. That this is a website that actually talks about tips for distance learning in regard to social emotional learning. So they have an acronym called REALM. You can look into that if you're interested. They talk about ways to engage students, ways to check in with them that are a little bit more focused on their emotions, how to share with them online games, practicing mindfulness. So there's all kinds of things you can look up in there. So that is again at the very bottom here where it says Institute for SEL. So we are wrapping up our Pear Deck session. I would like you guys to take just a moment and share the most important thing that you have learned from today's session. So you should see an open text box there. I would really appreciate you letting me know what helped you. What did you take away from this that was really, really important? So I'll give you guys just a few minutes to fill that out. And I will be sharing these up on the screen so we can discuss them a little bit and really see where everybody's at by the end of this session. This particular slide is also a really great exit ticket for your students. So for those of you who do use exit tickets to assess learning, you can do an open-ended question like this They have templates that are just happy face, not happy face. They have ones that are really simple. They do range ages. So I would think that the happy face, you know, not so happy face, and medium face, and sadder face, and sad face, those ones that go across, those ones are probably more for a younger student, but then again, you could use them for any student. So they have them spanning different age groups. So you'll see different templates for different age groups as well. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and show the responses. So the drag function to survey students and ask questions. It's okay if I put my students' emotional well-being ahead of the lesson plan. Absolutely. I am a huge advocate of making sure students are well. There are students who have failed my class, but we have such a good relationship, and their emotional state improved so much that was their success. You know, weren't able to do the work, but yet they grew as a person, and that to me was far more important. We can engage students from a distance. It's a great tool. I agree. I like this tool. I learned about it before ISTE. When we went to ISTE, we had the chance to really talk to the representatives at ISTE, and that was really neat. And for those of you who don't know, ISTE is like the technology education event that takes place once a year. They pushed ours this year. We were supposed to go during the summer, but we went to Philadelphia last year and got a chance to really look at some of those cool tech tools that they had available. So, but yes, I like this tool a lot. It's a great engagement tool, and I think it would be more utilized if teachers knew more about how it could benefit them and how it really can increase the engagement of their students. So cool things to engage. SEL is important. Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate the compliments. Yeah, Pear Deck's pretty cool. I don't know if if Chris wrote that, but yeah. All right, so SEL, validation, changing teaching techniques, normalizing the abnormal, best uses for Pear Deck, how to get more engagement, connections. And connections are really everything. From what I've been teaching, this is my 6th year teaching, and I really feel like the relationships are truly the most important things. I have students that talk to me 5 years later. They really have that relationship we have. They look up to me. So what you invest into your students right now, you'll still see the benefits of that for years to come. Whereas like the papers, the things they learn in class, they may or may not remember, but those relationships are like number one. Okay, great. So Pear Deck gives you some ideas. Interacting, engage with students more. That's our goals, to engage them. And keeping in mind, some of these students, you guys, they're going through this 6 times a day. You know, they have 6 different classes. This is a lot for them to take on. So if you try to put it in that perspective, I try very hard to not make it like I give them a very robust curriculum, but I don't make it busy. So give them something good, but don't overwhelm them. And I think that's something that a lot of districts are trying to get our teachers to do. So gauging emotional status, taking that temperature, love it. Unique ways to incorporate Pear Deck. That realizing how much our students have going on that we don't know about. Over the years, I've had a lot of really interesting things happening with my students, and they usually feel very comfortable with me, and they'll tell me about these things, and you know, it's amazing what goes on that you don't even realize, and the things that they have to deal with nowadays, and things that maybe we never had to deal with as kids or teenagers. Nice list of resources, different forms at disposal. Thank you guys very much. I do appreciate you guys being here. I know that you guys have probably attended like a million sessions, and you have so many emails that are coming at you. I understand it's overwhelming, so I do really appreciate you guys being here. And I'm going to turn it back over to Chris.
Okay, so even though I agree that Wendy McClung is awesome, I did not write either one of those. So people think you are fantastic.
That's very kind. Thank you guys.
Right now I want to give you guys a minute. If you have any questions for Wendy, if there's anything you want to ask her, I'm going to give you a minute to go ahead and type them out in the Zoom chat. Again, if you go and kind of hover to the bottom, it says there's a chat icon. You can click it there. If you have a question for her, go ahead and ask that. And then, like I said, I'll give you guys about a minute to do that. And then Kathy will kind of accumulate those, and then we will answer them.
Say it's kind of like hosting the Zoom class, waiting for the students to reply.
Yeah, right.
There's always a delay, and it's uncomfortable, isn't it?
Now you know how it feels. All right. So any questions, Kathy?
I do have a question from Matt Stewart. Can you incorporate other quiz software like Padlet or Quizlet into Pear Deck?
Yeah, you would use the website one where you embed a website in there, but they would still have to go outside of it, I believe, to use a different like a different software or different web-based template. So you can still use Padlet, but it kind of takes the place of Padlet in a way. There's a lot of different things. There's more to this than I actually showed you. There's no way I could have gotten through everything. So you might want to use it and replace the Padlet form with this, or you could do like what Chris did, and he did the Padlet before we started Pear Deck. So you can do it beforehand, and you can just start the Pear Deck after you do that. So you can, if you like the Padlet and you like the formatting, that works. But if you want to use like that way of assessing, that's just a quick assessment, you can there's even features in Pear Deck that do the same thing. So either way, it's fine.
Awesome. Very cool.
Okay. Yeah, Matt Stewart said, okay, that makes sense. I'll have to look deeper into it. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Fantastic. We're going to go to the next slide, please. So to kind of, we'll wrap up about 15 minutes early, no biggie. But if you do have questions about this stuff, or just questions in general about teaching and what's going on with your district or your class or whatnot, please feel free to reach out to your PM, reach out to myself. If you want to know more about this particular stuff, Wendy can answer those. Here's another question. If you're having, and actually, Wendy, this is a good one for you to answer also. If you have a guest speaker, what's the best platform to use?
For me, I use Zoom, because with Google Meet, from my district, you can only get into Google Meet if you have a district email. So I would use Zoom and just make sure that you have the waiting room enabled, and then that it has a password. And those are some safety tips I've learned. Zoom for me is my favorite, because you can actually record the audio and just post the audio later that goes along with things. And Redlands Unified, for us, they've asked us to not post actual videos on our classroom, just the audio. So Zoom allows you to do that. And I really like that. So then later on, students can listen to it like a podcast. So Zoom is my choice, but Google Meet's also good. There's nothing wrong with Google Meet. It's just, it works a little differently.
Yeah.
And then Matt brings up a great point that Google Meet gives the students too much control. And I agree. I think it's a great tool, but I prefer Zoom personally.
Yeah. Very cool. Awesome.
Sorry, Chris. Sorry to interrupt you. I just want to interject one more thing that occurred to me. I know I feel very, very comfortable with emotional needs of students, because that's what my whole background is. That's what my degree is in. And I think there might be some teachers that are feeling like uncomfortable with that. So I want to just encourage you that you don't have to be an expert in mental health. Please don't feel like you have to know the answers, but just be human, like be human with them. And that's all it really takes to connect with people, is that humanness side of you. So I have to sometimes take a step back, because I start to analyze, bring in my theories, I just have to go, wait a minute, just be human. That's all they're asking you to do, is to really just care about them. And that's a human quality. That's something that anybody can do. So just want to encourage you guys.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And I've said that before. If you think back to who your favorite teacher was in high school, a lot of times it's not only the content, or it may not even be the content at all that you taught, that you learned from them, but it's the relationship you had with that teacher. So that's a great point. So again, just please feel free to contact us. If you do have questions, you can email myself at any time. I am available, in addition to your program managers and everybody who's on your campus. If you want to get a copy of this presentation right away, the link is at the bottom there. It's bit.ly/April 2020 tip. And you can have that, and all the stuff that goes along with it, the clickable stuff or whatnot, is there for you to start messing with right away. And we are doing this, Wendy is doing this again next week. That's the email I sent out yesterday. So if you wanted to see it again, you can certainly register for it. This one we've opened up to the entire state. And so we already have a lot of reservations for that. But you guys fortunately got to have the sneak peek of what we're presenting next week as well. And other than that, I can't think of anything else, Wendy, that we need to address, or Kathy.
No.
Okay, I think we're good.
That's
Yeah, keep plugging along. I heard we're about 6 weeks away from wrapping up the school year. I keep hearing fantastic things that your campuses are doing, especially for the seniors that are graduating. I know the Rev yesterday had the kids were picking up cap and gowns, and all the teachers were there to cheer them on and whatnot. And that was really cool for the kids. So remember, the kids are the most important thing of what we're doing and why we do what we do. And other than that, I'm gonna let you guys go a little bit early. Next month, we will have it'll be your last tip session, and we're going to cover more of the nuts and bolts of your school year, closing down your classrooms, especially when we're in this. And so Tom Hanks is one of my favorite actors of all time. Apollo 13 is one of my favorite movies of all time. And then there's that whole scene where they're trying to figure out like how they need to build the breathing mechanisms for them to all come up. I feel like that's what we're doing in the office. Like, we're NASA trying to figure out how to land you all safely in the next 5 weeks. So we're going to cover some of that in our tip meeting in May, about how we're going to start closing out our classrooms, and we'll have that procedures and policies a little bit down the road for you. But other than that, yeah, feel free to contact us, and we are here to support you. You're not alone, and thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you, hopefully, really see you soon, and you guys take care. Bye.
Be safe.
Thanks,
Bye,
Chris.
guys.
Thanks, Wendy.
You're welcome.